You're listening to the Unsung podcast, where we talk about classic albums and decide if they deserve that distinction. And we also talk about some unsung classics in the hopes of bringing them to a new audience. And at the end of it all, we let you decide if we were right or wrong. This is the Unsung podcast. You're listening to episode 35 of the Unsung podcast. On last week's episode, we spoke about Whatever You Love, You Are by Dirty 3, and the public have decided that record does indeed make it into our discography. So thank you very much to everybody who listened and to all of those who voted. We really appreciate it. On this episode, we are talking about the very first Iron Maiden record, titled Iron Maiden. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Unsung podcast. I'm your host Mark Fraser, and I'm joined by two men who are wearing tighter spandex than Dave Murray.
Oh, I can see the outline of your guitar.
And to my left is David Weaver, who is positively pitching a spandex tent at the prospect of talking about Iron Maiden for what will probably feel like an eternity.
And to my right is Mr. Chris Cusack, who is the most miserable man in Glasgow for the last week because he's had to listen to Iron Maiden for a week. And listen to their entire discography.
Yeah, actually, a member of my family died last week, and this was the worst part of my week.
That's pretty harsh.
It's funny because it's true as well, right?
So
edgy. Unsung podcast. Edgy
as fuck.
18 and over.
You're going to get us Alex Jones from iTunes, mate.
Alex Jones get kicked off YouPorn. How fucking crap do you have to be to get kicked off YouPorn?
And Twitter, everything is amazing.
He's not kicked off Twitter.
Yeah, you got banned from Twitter today.
Oh, today?
Yeah. Really?
Fresh.
Excellent work.
They said that he had contravened the rules 7 times, 5 of which happened before they changed the rules, and 2 of which was definitely enough to ban him going forward, and then just went ahead and did it today.
His entire show is based on the premise of contravening the rules.
Yeah.
The good ones and the bad ones. Oh, he's a fucking roaster, man.
So speaking of roasters, what are we doing this week?
We're doing Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden, their debut album from 1980, released on EMI.
Let's fucking talk about why this is the album you picked, because I really want to know.
That's because, right,
why the fuck are we talking about Iron Maiden? This is what I want.
We have to talk about Iron Maiden at one point.
Why?
Because they're fucking Iron Maiden. They are their own genre.
This is the Unsung podcast.
Yeah,
unless you're going to pick Select 11 or whatever that is, then why the fuck?
That's absolutely. So Iron Maiden have never been the biggest selling of bands compared to
100 million records, mate.
No, but
they're up there with Depeche Mode, and we never talk about. Oh, wait a minute.
They haven't sold. People always talk about
Virtual 11.
Iron Maiden are very influential.
Yes,
and
for better and worse.
You're absolutely right. They are why I don't own many metal albums.
The fact is that most people that are into metal are into Iron Maiden. And Iron Maiden are their own little sort of genre. And the things you think of when you get Iron Maiden, I think there's like sort of 3 main things. There's the galloping bass guitar, there's the dueling harmonic guitars, and then there's Bruce Dickinson going, but that last one only came into existence after their third album.
Yeah, so I think we're going to hit a wee kind of bump here anyway, because I was like, I know fuck all about Iron Maiden. I need to somehow contribute.
Yes, we're talking about this because you know fuck all about
something
Iron Maiden.
useful to this discussion. So I consulted with the man Richard Bruce, that we've mentioned before. Richard Bruce is the authority on the Maiden, and he was like, I'd like to quote for you because I thought it was illustrative of a number of things.
Let's hear it then.
Considering that the song Iron Maiden gets played at every gig and is pretty much a high point, Running Free also gets played a fair bit, and if they were to suddenly play anything else of the album in a live situation, the crowd would pretty much go tits, as seen by recent appearances of Phantom of the Opera. I would disagree with this choice. Your 91 to 99 era albums are the less talked about, and maybe a couple of the newer Bruce albums mid-2000s.
They're less talked about because they're
many,
fucking shit.
For many people, the first two are unimpeachable. Everything that followed is not. Fundamentally, Dave is talking balls and you should leave the hall, for he is a false.
No,
I
there
will
is
say
the pinnacle of Iron Maiden's career commercially and their sound is Number of the Beast, it's Peace of Mind, and it's Power Slave. Power Slave, which I'm going to go out there and say is maybe objectively their best record.
Oh man, really? Seventh Son for me, man, because it's got
Everybody has
the
their
keys
own,
on it, and it sounds fucking mad.
Everybody has their own favourite record. If you're an Iron Maiden fan, you have your own favourite Iron Maiden record. This is my favourite Iron Maiden record. You're not an Iron Maiden
I'd like
fan,
to
so you can
contend
fuck
with
off.
the claim that everyone has their own favourite Iron Maiden record. Well, okay, this album only sold 2.8 million records.
Only.
Killers only sold 4 million records. Number of the Beast sold 14.2 million.
How much did the first Foo Fighters record sell?
Hang on, I've got my stats here, mate. I'm trying to sound like I can do something this episode. Power Slave 4.5 million. Peace of Mind 5 million. Fear of the Dark, oh my god, even just saying it, 3.5 million.
That's a rancid record as well. That's fucking so bad, that album.
Whereas Virtual 11, 700,000.
Even so, I'm prepared. Can you believe what you hear? Can you believe what you see? Can you believe what you feel? Can you believe what is real?
Dance of Death, sorry, 1.5 million. Brave New World, only 2 million, despite Big Bruce's back.
Well, Big Bruce is back after the band were in the wilderness for like 5-6 years. Wait, what's his face?
Blaze Bayley.
Blaze Bayley. Who's, so try to go grunge, but not really.
Yeah, terrible. The fact is that their 90s output is fucking awful. The last few records since, well, they've actually been back together for 19 years. Which is fucking mental. But you know, like, those records are hit or miss. There's a couple of really good ones. Book of Souls is alright. A Matter of Life and Death is pretty decent.
You lead me on the path, keep showing me the way. I feel a little lost, a little strange today. I think I'll take a hold of whatever comes my way.
Brave New World's okay.
And Brave New World is actually probably the best one. Like, they came back to that because it was like, to be honest, it was the one that sounded most like this, because it was the most straightforward. They had 3.5 minute songs. The thing that people always mention when they talk about this record, and that's why I like it most, is because it's punky. It's got this punk edge to it.
Is it? Fuck.
It fucking is. Listen to listen to Prowler. Listen to
I mean,
Charlotte.
Look at the fucking lines on my face. I listen to those songs, right?
Aye.
I used to be quite youthful for my age until this week.
These songs were written in East London in 1978, 1979 amongst punks.
Yeah, I mean, but wait,
they were like tour, like playing pubs with punk bands. And they've got this punk energy about them.
Wait a minute. Let's not conflate two fucking very distinct movements, right? The new wave of British heavy metal, right? And Maiden were formed in 75, and by the way, it's no fucking coincidence they're named after a torture device.
Yeah, but they were like a pub band for a couple of years. They didn't have anybody.
They weren't a fucking punk band.
Pub band. They were a pub band.
Right, they were a pub band. They still sound like a pub band.
No, pub bands now sound like that.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, same thing. But no, I mean, the new wave of British heavy metal and the punk movement happened in tandem, but they were very distinct.
No, I know, but you listen to this album and Killer's a bit like Paul Di'Anno's vocals are way more punk.
Well, Paul Di'Anno started in a punk band called the Pedophiles.
Yeah,
and so he did come from punk background, but this is as metal as it gets. Right from the off.
I can see arguments for both, to be honest.
I mean, their influences right from the off as well were like Deep Purple and Black Sabbath.
Steve Harris, yeah.
Maiden is Steve Harris.
No, but on this record, Dave Murray is like pounding those chuggy riffs. Dennis Stratton's sort of a lot more into the sort of jangly bits.
Big Dennis got the boot.
Dennis got. I mean,
so did Murray for a while.
Talk about a band that we were talking about, Dirty Three last week. Who remained the Dirty Three, the same of them. The lineup changes in Iron Maiden are amazing.
Yeah. Iron Maiden have got a tendency, I have noticed when I was doing the research for this, for kicking anybody out of the band who like to have fun.
Mm-hmm. Which is weird because to me, Iron Maiden are fun.
Wait a minute.
It's true, absolutely true, right? Fucking like Paul Di'Anno's kicked out because he liked doing drugs, right?
You are, oh my god, Paul Di'Anno was kicked out because of repeated incidents of domestic violence.
Oh, see, I didn't read about that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because anybody who was not wanting to like basically be the touring band Steve Harris wanted to be, anybody that was into drink, drugs, anything like that was fucking booze for the band.
You are shitting on Harris pretty badly here. Harris
is a great songwriter and he's apparently a really nice guy, and it's a shame that his daughter's band shit and his solo band's also a bit crap, but the fact of the matter is, like, he is the no fun police.
You are echoing the line of Paul Di'Anno, who said that, like, talking to, like, was it Rod Smallwood
was like talking to Mussolini and Hitler.
Right. Steve Harris started the band, kept the band going, gave the band its sound along with Murray.
I'm not saying that his philosophy is wrong. I'm just saying that, like, for a band who are synonymous with being like really tongue in cheek and being like sort of a fun sounding band, but they don't have fun.
No, but they ended up having fun. I think Bruce Dickinson has fun.
Yeah, I mean, I need to take issue with that, man. Right? So Paul Di'Anno sang on Iron Maiden, the eponymous album, and Killers. Right? Paul Di'Anno got the boot in 81 because he was neither able nor willing to perform regularly, and they just couldn't align him. And since then, Paul Di'Anno's banned from the USA because he was caught by the cops for a number of serious spousal abuse, incidents of spousal abuse, for possession of large quantities of drugs, and for firearms offences.
What a guy.
Right? Banned for the fucking States, so he couldn't tour with his own band or go and do some Anthrax thing he got asked to do. Yeah, he had a gruffer voice and was like a character, aren't we all, when we're fucking knocking shit out our girlfriends? But nah, man, I mean, I don't think that's a valid criticism of Steve Harris. Why am I defending a guy that inflicted Iron Maiden on the world?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
But Paul Di'Anno Paul Di'Anno is a dog shit fucking human.
Absolutely, I'm not a bad.
He is a real piece of shit. Plus, his name's Paul Andrews. He's not even Italian. He just made that shit up to sound interesting.
Don't for one second think that I'm A, defending Paul Di'Anno, or B, saying that Steve Harris's fucking attitude towards being a band is incorrect. I'm just saying that anybody that actually didn't toe the party line and liked to have fun just fucking was kicked out. That's just the way it's always been. Him and Rob Smallwood.
Hey, there's a happy medium here. There's a happy medium here. I like Iron Maiden
a lot. I think Steve Harris is a great songwriter. His bass playing is untouchable.
I think he's a shit songwriter.
And yeah, you would say that. So I have no problem with fucking Steve Harris or Iron Maiden. I like the band a lot.
You have no problem with fucking Steve Harris?
Well, no, in terms of like the way he runs his outfit, I'm just saying anybody that was kicked out of the band was done because, they weren't toeing the party line, which is pretty brutal.
The takeaway message is that you have no problem fucking Steve Harris.
No fucking problem.
Just another little bit of info as well. Paul Di'Anno, Rod Smallwood bought him out when he got fired. Yeah, so he gets nothing for the back catalogue. Get it right up, you idiot.
Well, my opinion, he's a shit vocalist, which is why I'm really confused as to why you picked this record.
No, I think he's a better vocalist than Dickinson.
I really like this. See,
hang on. Also, to get his own back though, Paul Di'Anno formed a band called Killers in 1990, right, which has come and gone a wee bit, right? Killers, for fuck's sake. And he got a $250,000 advance from BMG by turning up and playing nothing but Iron Maiden songs for the executives, and they were so clueless that they didn't know they were Iron Maiden songs, so they gave him $250,000 on the spot.
Fucking hell.
So, but that guy is a tool.
But this was the first Iron Maiden album I heard. And like many things we talk about,
bless.
This is why you like what you hear first. So
it's also unanimously critically praised. It was a massive commercial success at the time. It blew the gates open for heavy metal. I'm just not sure it qualifies.
I think it does qualify because the Iron Maiden sound isn't complete on this record. It isn't Killers. Paul Di'Anno's voice is better on Killers. The songs are arguably better on Killers as well. It's got fucking Wrathchild on it, which is a stunning song.
Oh my god.
Phantom the Opera is also pretty good, but on this record, but this is a band who are trying to become.
Steve Harris doesn't even like this record. He doesn't like the production on it.
Yeah.
He says it's muddy, but I love the production on this record.
Well,
I think it's better than the production on Killers. And then I think they became a different band when they had Bruce Dickinson. I think their foundations were built here. I think they got that galloping bass in on this record, and they got those sort of dueling guitar harmonies in on this record. But that final,
but they weren't the only ones.
Leg of the Iron Maiden trident.
Trident.
It didn't come in until Bruce
Tripod
and Number of the Beast.
Do you not think that a lot of the vocals, that especially maybe not so much on this record, but on Killers, are definitely sound like they're written by Steve Harris, because it sounds like Bruce Dickinson should be singing them.
Yeah, I feel like Killers gets a lot of praise, and I do really like it. But yeah, you're right. I feel like it's that sort of half. It's not quite what they want to be, and it's not quite this.
Scream for mercy. He laughs as he's watching you bleed. Killer behind you. His bloodlusted father, his knee.
Whereas this was just. It's got that sort of punk energy to it. I know you totally disagree.
They said that the engineer for this wasn't particularly interested in the project, and so they ended up doing a lot of it themselves, because he would just fuck off and leave them to do their takes and things.
Well,
they also went through a couple of producers before actually settling on the final production team. Their second one got fired for asking Steve Harris to use a pick on his bass. And I'm right behind that guy. Right? His name was Andy Scott. And Andy, if you're out there and you're in the pub drinking your sorrows away, mate, I'm on your team. Basses sound shit when they're played with the fingers, right?
I actually quite fundamentally agree with that, if I'm honest. So can we go into the Nexus just now?
This album was completed in 13 days, by the way.
Can we go to the Nexus, because we've mentioned producers?
Alright, let's go for the Nexus then.
Is the producer on this record.
I have a Beast of a Nexus.
Okay,
cool.
This week.
And you got a Beast of a
Hang on a second.
Hit the damn music.
I talk about it, carries on, reasons only new. When I talk about it, carries on, pictures only new. Big me, we can get around it, I can stand it through. If we can get around it, I know that it's true.
well done.
We're professionals.
Right, who's going first?
Mark.
Okay, Will Malone produced this record, and produced the second record as well. Interesting side fact, over the course of their 16 albums, Iron Maiden have only ever worked with 3 different producers.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Really, really weird. How can you have 16 records and only use 3 producers for all those albums?
16 studio albums, 38 albums in total.
Yeah. Anyway, Will Malone also produced Black Sabbath records, and who's in Black Sabbath? Tony Iommi, and Tony Iommi released his first solo album in the early 2000s, and the third track on that's a song called Goodbye Lament, which has both Brian May and Dave Grohl on guitar and vocals.
Oh, there you are. Chris?
Dave, I think yours is probably going to be like Lord of the Rings, so I'll go next.
Yep.
So my Nexus is that Bruce Dickinson on Ed Force 666,
their own private plane,
Ed Force 1, whatever they call it, on his private plane, because he is a pilot, once flew a stranded turtle from Jersey to the Canary Islands. Alright, as you probably know, Kurt Cobain was a big fan of turtles, and Kurt Cobain had a turtle in the early 90s called Sappy, which became the name of a Nirvana song, later known as Verse Chorus Verse on their releases. But they recorded the song Sappy the most 4 times, and on 2 of those times that they recorded Sappy, Dave Grohl played the drums.
It's pretty good.
That is a funky name.
Hang on, was Dave Grohl in Nirvana?
Oh shit!
I've just
why have we never thought about that
He
one?
joined in guitar for a year.
Totally missed that.
So Iron Maiden,
He was the gay
their third vocalist on a record was, as mentioned, Blaze Bayley. He recorded 2 albums, Virtual 11 and the other one. They were both fucking awful. Virtual 11 and X Factor.
X Factor, wow. Imagine calling it that when it already existed as well.
Terrible records.
They've got that
Blaze
really
Bailey is
one good
currently in a live band that includes Jeff Singer, who is a drummer who also drums with, I don't know if you remember this band, Chris, Kill to This.
song. Kill to This.
How could I forget?
Kill to This.
The
Possibly
stars.
the worst
The
new metal
stars of our
band.
new metal episode.
And now Kill to This' third record, Trinity, featured Burton C. Bell of Fear Factory. They covered 2 Tribes by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. So
Goodness.
if only we could listen to that right now.
When 2 tribes go to war, point is all that you can score. When 2 tribes go to war, point is all that you can score.
Let's continue. I'm only about a quarter of the way there. So Dino Cazares of Fear Factory is also in Brujeria, that sort of Mexican like drug pirate metal band, also featuring Billy Gould from Faith No More. And of course Mike Patton of Faith No More is also in a band called Tomahawk.
Mm-hmm. Getting closer.
Also with Dwayne Dennison from the Jesus Lizard.
Also with Kevin Ritmanis of Melvins.
Now, the Jesus Lizard, they had a track called Panic in Cicero,
Did.
feature on the Clerks soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kevin Smith directed Clerks. He also directed
This is
Dogma.
needlessly circuitous at this point.
Yeah, he directed Dogma, which of course starred Alanis Morissette as God.
I see. And the drummer for Alanis Morissette.
No, the bassist on You Ought to Know
Oh my
was
God.
Flea.
I fucking hate you, man.
Now, Flea played bass in the Red Hot Chili Peppers,
He did.
who were produced for a couple of records by Rick Rubin. Now, Rick Rubin appears in the documentary movie Sound City, produced and directed by Dave Grohl.
Well done.
My God, we swung by Dave Grohl's house about an hour ago a number of times.
Now, he wasn't in, so we had to wait, and now we've parked up in the
Do you know
drive.
the producer of this record, Will Malone? He also produced The Verve, Massive Attack, and Depeche Mode. I totally understand why we're not give a fuck about Iron Maiden.
Yeah, so can I just touch on something, by the way?
Hang on. Plays out.
If we could get around it, I know that it's true. But I got that out and put it on. Never thought it's true. Well, it's you. I fell into. I fell into. I fell into.
Oh, that was brilliant.
They're a genius.
Second time through, it was
Fucking genius.
the key. So that whole thing about this being a punkier record, right? Like, new wave of British heavy metal did exist at the same time as a punk movement. I get that, but the part of the appeal of the heavy metal movement was that it was less political. It was more about. I mean, it happened against the backdrop of the 70s in the UK with all the poverty, the kind of Labour and Conservative governments, horrendous situations at the time. It was part of that expression of like youth frustration through mass unemployment and a lack of upward mobility and just general hopelessness that existed within the country at that time. I think this is quite distinct for the punk movement. I think the band that came closest to bridging that gap was Motorhead, and Motorhead can't even necessarily be considered part of the new wave of British heavy metal because they predated it. In fact, Lemmy even said that they didn't really benefit from it because they happened too soon to really ride that wave.
Because we shoot to kill, and you know we always will. It's a bomber, it's a bomber.
So I don't hear the punk thing in this, man. I hear a lot of like AC/DC type moments. You know, you can hear that stuff emerging. I hear stuff in this that I could imagine Chris Cornell singing on, like spitting on Killers as well. There's a couple of riffs in there that are quite Sabbathy, and they show where they were taking their influences. Yeah, okay, Phantom of the Opera as well was like going into the prog territory, and Harris has said that was the first time he really stretched his legs in that way. But I do think there is quite a distinction. I mean, at the time as well, obviously you had like Saxon, Def Leppard, and then you had kind of lesser known bands like Diamond Head, Venom, Raven, who stayed more underground
because they were mostly shit.
Yeah, but if that was the rule, then surely Maiden would still be there.
Throwing shade right, left and centre.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. You're saying it's a bit rougher and it's a bit raw, but it was rough and raw, and it was a genre developing.
No,
I really don't think it's punky at all, though, man. It's pretentious. It's kind of pompous. I mean, they had about 5 singers before Paul Andrews joined, and some of them were like spitting blood on stage and wearing makeup, and others, like, I mean, they fired their guitarist for pretending to play guitar with his teeth at one point. It's like, I mean, that's not in the slightest bit anything even close to the punk movement, which was...
I'm saying sonically...
I mean,
like,
I just think
you're
stretching credulity there, man.
No, I'm not. I mean, okay, cool.
But Harris is on record as well, though, saying that he hated punk.
Yeah, I know, but I don't think it was down to Harris. I think on this record they had sort of competing elements of the songwriting, and Harris was into the more proggier stuff. You know, like Phantom of the Opera was what he wanted. He wanted a brilliantly produced prog metal masterpiece like Phantom of the Opera. Didn't get produced that well, so what he wanted was Powerslave, basically, because that's like the pinnacle of what Iron Maiden could do as a band, as a metal band, as a prog metal,
as a pantomime. Let's be honest.
Exactly, and it's fucking great
fucking
fun.
Prog metal
It's great fun.
pantomime.
I mean,
so good,
and they're so fun. So much fun live as well. So much fun
I
live.
can only imagine how much fun I would have live at an Iron Maiden show.
Yeah, I think even you would smile at an Iron Maiden show, mate. I actually think you would.
You're right.
I spent your good old flatmate Rudy Danaher and myself spent a good 50 minutes driving up the A9 on Friday night, air guitaring to Iron Maiden. There's really
You should have had your hands in the wheel.
I can air guitar with one hand, and I've got cruise control, so it's fine.
And you've got knees.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't think there's any doubt that Iron Maiden are a fucking really fun band. They're highly influential for...
I'm not going to be so stupid as to deny that they're highly influential.
You know, exactly. You know, everybody from fucking Metallica to previously stated At the Gates to pretty much every punk metal band.
Yeah, no argument, man.
Exactly.
MC Hammer was highly influential as well.
Was he really? I'm not really sure. If
Spoken
MC
like a
Hammer
true
was
white man.
particularly influential
say,
amongst
like,
hip-hop artists.
Iron Maiden do something quite astonishing as regards they are one of the only things that can make me sympathise with Christian groups.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Because when they released Number of the Beast, they were picketed and ended up being like banned from playing shows in Chile and stuff.
So can we talk about the album then?
Yeah, so this record, I think it's
Well,
darker.
no.
It's silly, but it's not too silly. It's fun, but it's still a bit weird. It hasn't gone to their sort of late 80s trying too hard to be Iron Maiden, because they still haven't become Iron Maiden, as it were. I think it's a total gem. I think it's better than anything from like the 90s, definitely. You know, it's just got that rawer sound than, you know, the sort of mid 80s stuff, which is really good from a metal perspective. So I mean,
you know the track Prowler, like, obviously
kicks off with Prowler,
and
then that riff has definitely been ripped off by Papa Roach.
I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. That is astonishing.
Do
isn't it?
do, yeah. 100%. But it's such a fucking great riff to kick off with. It's just like,
so that
really
song's
grabs
part
you
of
by the throat.
how the band got picked up in the first place with that guy Neil Kay.
Yeah, because
The
they have a
band-
really
bandwagon heavy metal soundhouse. Yeah, and they submitted a demo of that to him.
Yeah, it was like 3 tracks, I think it was.
and then it got released on like 5,000 copies, and they sold out in like a few weeks.
Yeah,
which got them signed to EMI. Yeah, so that track has a big part in their history. It's interesting, we were talking about this just before we started recording, that Sanctuary, that dog shit second song, shouldn't be on this. It wasn't
so
on the original
I don't
edition.
think of Sanctuary being on it, because it wasn't on the original UK release.
Even though it was released as a single.
Yeah.
Spending money on gambling and guns to buy. I'm not really gone insane if you saw what I saw. Now I got to look for sanctuary from the Lord.
Although
It was a standalone single.
Yeah.
It was like a...
and it had the artwork on it had Ed, good old Eddie, standing over the corpse of Margaret Thatcher.
No, really?
in a overtly political
Nice
punk image. Chris.
Shooting fish in a fucking barrel there, weren't they?
Well, it was 1980. She just won a fucking landslide. Going against the grain, mate. Anyway, then it comes on to Remember Tomorrow should be track 2 because Sanctuary's shit.
Yeah.
The all-seeing eye flickers above us to light up
Such a beautiful haunting song.
I know it is, isn't it, Chris? It's shows that their
Depth of emotions,
ethereal,
their range. It really
dynamics. Beautiful little.
Won me over.
I think it's a fucking great song, and
I can tell
the heavy the riff when it comes in is fucking great.
I like it too.
I think it would have been better if it had synth on it. Do you know that Iron Maiden kicked out a guy called Tony Moore? He played one gig with them, and Tony Moore is a member of Cutting Crew.
Oh,
Hark! I just died in your arms tonight.
When was that?
That was like prior to this album.
That's quite funny because then they started embracing synths and Steve Harris played them on later 8 stuff.
Yeah, but he said
7th records.
synths didn't suit their sound, and that's why Tony got the boot.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to start experimenting after 5 records, so that's fine.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, though. It's got that, it'd fill the sound up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a really good song. And then Running Free, that was the single off this record that got them on Top of the Pops.
Yeah, as Rick was saying in that text condemnation of you, Running Free's like proven to be quite a live treat.
Yeah.
We've never actually chosen an album with a single off it that's been on Top of the Pops, have we?
Yeah, it was the first.
It was actual bullshit.
It was the first live performance on Top of the Pops since 1972 when the Who played live in it.
Yeah, because they didn't want to mime.
Yeah, so for like 9 years, or 8 years, not Top of the Pops had been all miming, and then fair play to them.
It's really weird they didn't actually embrace that same logic when they went on and did the Wicker Man in 2000.
Yeah, I know. Which
On
they
Top of the
definitely
Pops,
went
with Fire
to.
and Ed. It was all mimed.
That was fine, though. They were back. They were showing what they could do.
Yeah. I remember
visually.
I remember being a kid and just talking about Eddie, and like it was one of the first bits of graffiti, maybe the first bit of graffiti I ever remember, between my house and my primary school. The path that I used to walk had Iron Maiden sprayed in the lampposts, and somebody had done an Eddie
Ed Hunter, yeah,
like a spray paint thing, and I used to find it like really like scary.
Well, the artwork from this album really stuck with me as well, because so I found this cassette.
I was
in my
4.
Well, yeah, I was 4 as well, but like that's why it stayed with me, because I found this cassette in my uncle's old collection of cassettes that he used to live in my house, and then he was into obviously his 80s metal and hair metal and everything. It was like Whitesnake, Marillion, Def Leppard, and I think this was one that grabbed me visually as well, and then I played it in the cassette player, and I listened to fucking Iron Maiden's debut album whilst playing with Lego, aged 5.
Nice.
But like visually, it totally freaked me out as well. It's like quite a scary image for a 4-year-old.
I remember like track titles as well, like bring your daughter to the slaughter, and being really sort of perturbed by the kind of the violence of that. Like, I know that was part of their thrill, but they were fucking adults. I was 4 or 5 years old, but I remember that kind of getting under my skin a wee bit.
It's our first
coupled
and
with
only
imagery.
number 1 single.
Is that right?
Yeah, they released it in the quietest period.
So bad.
Like, it is a horrible song.
Crap song from a crap record.
Yeah, they released it right after Christmas when sales would be the lowest, and they released it in like 3 or 4 different formats, and all of our fans bought it and it went number 1. So, yeah.
Clever.
Yeah, clever stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this album's the first album to mention Charlotte the Harlot as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
She appears in like 4 different
As
records.
a character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giving a switch for your eyes in the energy now with the cyan. Shot at the soul they find when you take on the love that you give them. Sticking with every man that you find that you know with the rafter. Shot at you got your legs in the energy here with the laughter.
Dave Murray just showing his colours there. He's songwriting nouse.
Good song though. It's a good song.
That's a good song, yeah.
It was kind of brought to my attention as well.
It's definitely not a Steve Harris song.
That was better than the actual song. It was kind of brought to my attention as well that the first 2 records of Iron Maiden, they did talk and they did sing a little bit more about slightly more real world things and like slightly more street related working class things. They were a working class.
You try to say the Trooper is not real life.
The new wave of British heavy metal was a working class movement, and in fact heavy metal in general was, and or at least back then, and they sang about stuff that was a little bit more real. What I think's kind of slightly absurd, and certainly in hindsight it's kind of weird, is when Iron Maiden started to get into their like, as did that metal movement, into their ultra macho
Sort of fantasy
world. And it is,
I don't think Iron Maiden were particularly macho. I think
the heavy metal movement was quite macho, and as much as it didn't have a massive, it was largely dominated, it was almost entirely dominated by white people. It didn't have a big racism problem. It did have a homophobia problem, certainly in the early 80s,
which was ironic because Rob Halford was gay.
It is also the gayest of all genres as well. It makes disco look butch.
I mean, you say that, right? But Phantom of the Opera is a song about fantasy, so like they did it in the first record.
Yeah,
there are certainly hints of
but it's a little bit more
fantasy on this,
based in literature, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and the album cover is like a guy, Eddie.
He's more punk. Yeah.
Oh.
I get that.
No, he's just on he's
cut
on
off waistcoat and shit like that. Yeah, in a brick wall. Whereas when they got into their like fantasy, and it did set the tone for stuff like Megadeth as well. Getting
Absolutely,
into this like dystopian bullshit. The weird thing is there is an overlap. If you were to take the lyrical content of Iron Maiden and get into that really sort of Norse, quasi Lord of the Rings, past, future, dystopian fantasy bullshit, there's something, again, sorry to go back there, but there's something quite hyper masculine and kind of alt-righty about that. There's something quite red pill about the metal scene at that time, which was, in retrospect, I mean, just in the way that it was there for men to feel like men, and it wasn't. I mean, it's a very welcoming scene for women now, but I just think it's quite funny that it was so obsessed with like tales of like conquest and valor and Manowar and all these ultra stupid macho mythology that went along with it. Yet it was also like quite misogynist, and it's quite a weird thing. I mean, it's hard to take it seriously, and it was very innocent then. It's sort of been it's taken a much more sinister tone.
Yeah, and I think that's looking at it
the more modern it's got,
and with hindsight,
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not accusing
in 1985 when
them
they
of
wrote
any malicious sort of intent.
Rhyme with the Ancient Mariner, I think they were just going, fuck it, we can write a 12-minute song about Samuel Coleridge, because they're just it's the 80s. They just had loads of cocaine and we're going mental.
Exactly. It's naive and it's stupid. It's just interesting how that has developed in a more sinister way in much more recent history, and it's quite it's quite funny.
I think kind of
it is a demographic as well, let's be honest, like lonely boys in their bedroom that fucking they've gone from Maiden to 4chan quite comfortably, you know what I mean? They've gone from Warhammer to 4chan as well.
I think it's quite interesting. Something that's quite interesting to that as well is like Iron Maiden's influence, having that fantasy element, is obviously had a huge influence in power metal as well, which is like the whitest of all metal.
Well, power metal
apart from black
basically
Iron Maiden
just
heavy.
Iron Maiden got they've just taken Iron Maiden and gone wild with it.
But then the fantasy side also kind of plays into black metal as well in a lot of ways, lyrical content too. So it's,
well, I mean, you look at like bands like Celtic Frost and stuff like that would cite Iron Maiden as influences. Pretty much fucking anybody's
played metal ever is either, I mean, even if they don't like Iron Maiden, they'll definitely play Iron Maiden riffs.
Yeah,
you know,
pretty much.
Like I'm just being honest. I fucking hate this band, right? You're never going to get anything constructive out of me on this episode.
How do they compare to Kiss? Like a band like Kiss?
Well, actually,
that's what I don't understand is how you can like Kiss and not like Iron Maiden, because Iron Maiden are fucking a lot better than Kiss.
Oh, shut up.
No, they are. Iron Maiden have better albums than Kiss have records, fucking tracks.
That is true.
I mean,
Iron Maiden no point talking about this because you're never even vaguely reasonable about Kiss.
Can we do a poll?
No. Can we definitely do a poll? Who's better, Iron Maiden or Kiss?
I think that we should definitely do that at some point. But see, what I talk about now, when we did the Jonah interview, and you said the greatest Kiss album was Greatest Kiss, right? That was the best Kiss record. Now, I would actually go out and let me say that someday, not me, you could make a really good argument for Edward the Great being the best Iron Maiden record because it's got all the fucking absolute bangers on it. It's 18 tracks, every single one of them is fucking brilliant, and there's none from the first 2 records on it.
I mean, how many Iron Maiden tracks can you slip into a fun DJ set at a push run to the hills? At a fucking push.
No, fucking Number of the Beast, Hallowed Be Thy Name.
The Trooper.
Man, that's just metal. That's just a metal DJ set. If you throw that into any fucking
I'm DJing
audience,
at the fucking Cat House, yeah.
yeah, like Kiss you can throw into a DJ set and folk dance. Like, I mean, let's just not go down there again. But it's funny that you mentioned them, right? Because between August and October 1988, Iron Maiden actually toured supporting Kiss. And it was like Kiss at their worst at that point. They'd hit a massive dip.
Was it like No Face Paint Kiss?
No, not yet. No Face Paint Kiss is actually when they went platinum
Crazy
again,
Nights
man.
And stuff like that, yeah.
But no, Kiss were like on this massive downturn. They'd done Dynasty, which is when they did like the disco stuff. They'd done those 4 dreadful solo albums because they were just completely up their own arse and unaccountable for anything.
Not back in New York Groove, Chris, no.
And then they released Unmasked, which was a Turkey as well, and Peter Criss ended up getting kicked out of the band at that point as well. So they were touring with a replacement drummer. Kiss were like struggling to really do it night after night. A lot of drugs. They were pretty fatigued. And Iron Maiden, by contrast, were young and hungry and just slaying like night after night. And it was just one of those tours where I think like Kiss, to be fair to them, were known for taking out very good bands. They weren't a band that hid behind shitty supports to make them look good. Like they took out AC/DC, they took out Judas Priest, I think they took out Cheap Trick. You know, they were ballsy and they didn't mind following a really, really promising band. But I believe from people who were Iron Maiden fans back then were Kiss fans back then, that Maiden kind of stole the thunder a lot of nights on that tour. But apparently Gene Simmons was a massive Iron Maiden fan, a really big fan of the first album, and he'd actually made an effort to go and be really hospitable to them. So I think as well, actually, one of the members of Maiden got a bit too friendly with Kiss, ended up touring on their bus instead of Maiden's bus, and got kicked out when they got back, or that was part of it anyway. But Simmons had gone into Iron Maiden's dressing room and had said, you know, that kind of ritual of, guys, lovely to be touring with you. This isn't the first night. I really, really love your first album. Your album at that point, sorry. I really, really love your album. And Paul Di'Anno, being an absolute prick, had the audacity to call Gene Simmons in this in front of him, like, oh really, you love our album, alright, well tell us the name of any of our songs. And so Gene Simmons, being Gene Simmons, then rattled off the name of all the songs in track order right in front of Paul Di'Anno's face. Well, then Kiss fell apart, and then they came back with the No Face Paint and sold millions of albums again.
Great, yeah.
Right in the middle of hair metal.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's like it came round to them.
Kiss.
Sort of.
Great.
I think it's probably no coincidence as well.
You don't get Iron Maiden, I don't get Kiss.
That must be it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's probably no coincidence as well that Iron Maiden's peak period was also during hair metal. Even though they'll have elements of that sound, or definitely.
I mean, it was just during the 80s when everybody was a bit more naive and just having fun, and people hadn't really got irony yet.
I don't think Iron Maiden are particularly known though for being overly lecherous or prone to debauched metal behaviour. They were like a pantomime band, like they were kind of
but they were just a big fucking stage show pantomime sort of.
They're a merchandise band as well. They're one of the first bands to really crack the notion that you can put monsters on t-shirts and kids will buy them to shock their parents. They must have made an absolute fortune, and the metal merchandise market is still got to be one of the most profitable merchandise markets in the world. Like, you can be a fairly successful metal band and sell a lot of merch, and a pop band sell next to no merch. You know? I think that's a master.
A lot of pop bands use metal imagery now. You know, because Iron Maiden fucking nailed their artwork, really.
Yeah. That's the thing about, like, Iron Maiden still are, I guess, the complete package of a band. Like, they had it all figured out from the word go, basically.
Yeah.
Marketing, sound, almost, everything. It was just all there.
And of course, we better finish this album. Phantom of the Opera, one of the best songs ever written.
Yeah, one of the best metal songs ever written by anybody.
Just fucking unbelievable.
Jesus Christ.
It's got 3 of the best guitar solos of all time in it, just in the one song. Oh fuck, I can.
It's definitely got 3 guitar solos.
It's just fucking unreal. Transylvania instrumental.
Is that their only
banger?
Is it their only instrumental?
Only
No,
instrumental song? Is it
Whatever.
not?
I thought it was their only one. Yeah.
I think it is.
I'm pretty sure there's a couple on Final. There's one on Final Frontier. I think I'm pretty sure there is.
Oh, maybe.
I mean, you're going to get hung out to dry if that's wrong.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's more. I'm pretty sure there's more than one instrumental
Don't get your
song.
phone out. That's cheating.
And then Strange World.
Is there not one in Killers? The first one in Killers is an instrumental song.
I'm telling the listeners, Mark's cheating, folks.
I'm totally cheating. I'm checking that out. I need to know.
And what comes after
Strange
that?
World.
Let's walk in deepest space. Living here just isn't the place.
Doesn't even have a riff.
Oh.
It's just fucking quiet. It's
I
great.
love
They're
that
like, I can't look at you. You just fuck.
Iron Maiden itself is a fucking
really
good song.
And,
as well.
yeah, Charlotte Harlot's a great song, even though it's ridiculous. And then Iron Maiden harmonies,
They
banger.
have played at every single
Yeah, Ides
concert.
of Mars, the first song in Killers is instrumental as well. I knew that.
But is that not just an intro, really?
No, actually,
It's
that's
actually a song. The song. yeah.
I suppose. Yeah, Iron Maiden is. They've played it at every single concert since their inception. Is that right?
That's fine.
Yeah, and it's the track where they bring out their big stupid fucking puppet.
Aye.
Yeah.
It depends on the show.
Great fun.
No, it's the track that introduces Eddie to the stage in one form or another. Yeah.
Anyway, when you mention Iron Maiden to most people, because you know they're a fairly big band, this is not the record they think of.
It's not. You're right.
And to me, it's
That's true.
their best.
Well,
It's either their best or it's their second
That's
best.
not entirely true. I think the allegation is that you're coming at this from like a third generation, pardon the phrase, semi-hipster metal perspective, and that the true metal, and I mean the true metal people, are like the first 2 Iron Maiden albums are definitive metal and are in no way underrated because they are revered on a plane of godliness that we can barely understand. For us, they are retro as fuck, but for people who have actually been following metal for their whole lives, the first 2 Iron Maiden albums are in no way any kind of kept secret. They are fucking something that's just
didn't sell nearly as many as the 3rd, 4th, and 5th records. It doesn't sound what you think of as the Iron Maiden sound. I think this is the really good Iron Maiden record that gets talked about least.
I think I'm kind of with Dave on this one. I think these 2 records are overshadowed just by the presence of Bruce Dickinson and all the other amazing 80s records they did. Like,
you know, I could have talked about maybe Peace of Mind because it's sandwiched in between Power Slave and Number of the Beast, but it's a Bruce Dickinson one and it's got fucking great tracks and it sold a lot.
It's spelt Piece.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think of sandwich.
Brain
If
sandwich.
you're from Scotland, a piece is a sandwich, and Peace of Mind, I'm looking at it, it's like, alright, the sandwich album.
speaking, like, one question I want to ask you then as a Maiden fan, is it's really difficult. I think it would be really difficult to argue the fact that the current incarnation of Iron Maiden that's been around for 19 years is the best live band they've ever been.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's just staggeringly good and so fucking loud. They weren't the loudest bands I've ever seen live because the 3 guitars just dimed.
They've
scary, man.
Yeah, they've nailed it. They know what they're doing now.
Yeah. And the fact that they don't utilise the 3rd guitar for just chugging is sad.
Yeah, I know. He's not allowed to just pretend to play it with his teeth.
Yeah.
And as much of a dick as Paul Di'Anno was, I really like the vocals on this record. And when I first heard Iron Maiden with Bruce, which would have been a good few years after I'd heard this record, it took me a while to get used to his theatrics. I really liked sort of straightforward gruffness of Paul. And to me, this is Iron Maiden for me, even though it's not what Iron Maiden are to most people.
That's probably quite a rare opinion, especially in our generation of people. Most people think Bruce, and rightly so, because he's phenomenal.
Exactly. He's been there forever and he's defined their sound.
I, for one, I'm really glad we managed to spend this much time talking about Iron Maiden.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. I'm glad we could do this.
So I don't think you should go in For any number of reasons, but I think we established
You
it.
don't think Iron Maiden should be in it at all?
No.
Okay, fair. I don't think it should go in because it's a tough one, man. I think Killers was when we're talking about unsung Iron Maiden records, and like Chris says, it's arguable if there even is such a thing. I say Killers is better because the production's better and the vocals are better, and it's got Wrathchild on it, which maybe not as good as The Phantom of the Opera. Is just I think it's one of the best songs they've ever written. Unsung Iron Maiden record that gets overlooked for me is probably Seventh Son, but it's sold so many millions of records, and it's just, it had some huge singles on it as well. So I'm going to have to say no for this one.
That's fine.
Dave, it's you and the public.
We'll just let the public decide.
Let's see what happens.
I don't mind.
Could drag your average down though.
That's cool.
Oh,
Mark, what's next?
Next is A Healthy Distrust by Sage Francis.
Cool.
Back to some old tip pop.
Great. Chris is
My
happy
God.
with that.
Yeah,
More joy for Chris.
The last tip pop record we did, you loved, so
that's true.
And you even played one of the songs at our club night.
Yeah, our club night went remarkably well.
Yeah.
I actually got some news for you. We might have another one coming up as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but more info when we have it.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much to everybody who listened. Please go vote on our Facebook page. Once again, if you've given us ratings, reviews, you've donated us money, thank you very much. We're recording with our own gear, which is fucking brilliant.
Go team.
Everything should hopefully sound better, Christopher.
No promises.
Yeah. One thing we'd ask of you though is if you could just, we know how many listeners we get every week, right? And it's roughly the same number. Even if just one of you told like one person, that would do so much for our listener numbers, like so much. So yeah. If you could just tell a pal, recommend this episode, maybe not, I don't know, any episode, it'd be totally fine, but that'd be awesome. We would really appreciate that. Or just direct them to our website because they're all there.
Yeah, please rifle back through the back catalogue, and if there's something you think will click with someone, be great if you just fire it to them. It's as good as anything, I think.
Yep. So thank you very much, guys.
No worries.
Bye.